Hello, you're watching Talking Europe on France 24. Our guest today here in Brussels is a European Commissioner who's got a lot of money at her fingertips, around 1/3 of the entire European budget, in fact. Well, for the current budget period, that means 350 billion euros to help fund such essential, not always glamorous items as a ring road in Bulgaria, broadband internet in Scotland, or indeed a new museum in a gritty part of industrial northern France. Corina Cretu is in charge of regional policy, something she's described as an essential element translating the solidarity that binds Europe together. Corina Cretu, thanks very much for being our guest today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Well, let's start with that quote that I mentioned just there. You're describing cohesion policy as this essential element translating solidarity that binds Europe together. Now, concretely, that means things like supporting ecotourism at the world-famous Mont Saint-Michel in France, or upgrading railway lines, sewage works, many more things. Now, all these things very useful, very nice, but why essential?
I think one of the added value of the European Union is cohesion policy, because it's a European Union main investment policy. As you said, it's about 315 billion, but together with the co-financing for the main member states, we have 600 billion euro invested. And if you go in every region, in every town, in every country, you can see one bridge, one school, or other things, as you described, that are needed for the people. It is true that we are not visible enough. According to our studies, 75% of the population, when they go into the school or into the hospital, they don't know that 80% or 90% of this money comes from the EU budget. So I think we should make an effort to show that Brussels means also European solidarity. It was this game, I think, that everything that bad is coming from Brussels and everything that good is coming from the Lord Mayors and from the national governments. But this game should stop, because this, if we don't talk about the good things we do, I think we all will lose. So I think it's very important to say that this cohesion policy mitigated a lot of the impact of the financial crisis in many member states. It would have been much more worse without cohesion policy.
Well, it is true, as you say, that often projects can be highlighted in the media, people saying, you know, Europe imposing things or spending my money on sewage works in Bulgaria, you know, and people getting annoyed about this kind of thing. What do you say to that kind of criticism? Because, you know, people are obviously fairly concerned about where their money from taxation is being spent.
If we talk about this EU budget, it's 1% of the 28 countries' GNI per capita. That means less than €1 per day. For less a cup of coffee per day, we are asked to do highways, railways, hospitals, everything. So I think it's very important for people to know that when you get €100 from a salary, €50 you give to the state for the insurance and taxes, and less than €1 goes to the EU budget. So I think it's a very important element, because we talk about EU budget as if we steal from the people, which is not true. It's something, as I said, a sign of financial solidarity. I see this policy the most visible, not because it's my portfolio, but everywhere if you go and you see the tangible results of this policy.
Those little EU plaques that we see sometimes in hospitals or on bridges, that kind of thing.
I think it's very important. I met a few days ago the new president of the French regions. He comes from Normandy, and which is a rich region, but he told me very clear that without cohesion policy, they will not have money for research, innovation. This is a difference, because we invest more in less developed countries or in poorer countries in basic services like waste, water, transport. But in the rich regions, we invest in research, innovation, which is driving forces for every economy.
And indeed, these funds are not directly managed by the Commission, are they? Handed over to the member states in sort of packages.
Every member has an allocation. And we assure the financial means, so we have some regulations, but when it comes to the implementation and selection of the programs, it's 100% the responsibility of the member states, because we cannot pretend from Brussels that we know what a region needs or what a city needs. So I think it's very important to allow people from the ground to design the project, and because they know better than us what people need.
Well, indeed, and we were talking about how wealthier countries in the European Union also benefit from this money. Every single member state gets some allocation. France,
and also indirect benefits, because you know very well that in the less developed countries, the most companies that do the railways or highways are coming from the rich countries. Commissioner Oettinger gave often this example of how much Germany is gaining from indirect benefits. From the companies that work outside on the European projects.
All right, well, let's take a closer look at one of the projects in France. In fact, well, you were mentioning Normandy. Nearby in northern France, there's a new-ish outpost, 5 years old, of Louvre-Lens, Lens being a former mining town. Now, this outpost of the Louvre Museum opened in 2012 in this region, not traditionally associated with high culture. Some were sceptical when it was born whether it would work or not. Take a look at our report.
When the Louvre opened a satellite museum in the former mining town of Lens in 2012, it was seen as audacious. A total budget of €172 million included 35 million from European funds. With its bold location, the museum gambled on attracting enough visitors. Yet in their first year, they more than doubled their target of 500,000.
It's an extraordinary museum, really extraordinary. And in a place certainly deserving of it. It's magical.
5 years on, the museum seems to have found its groove. Last year, visitors numbered nearly 450,000.
You can see over the last 5 years that attendance levels have stabilized, yet current levels are more than acceptable. For a regional museum like this to receive 450,000 visitors is truly exceptional.
Inside, a more contained traditional viewing space is replaced by a vast central hall measuring over 3,000 meters, with games to pique childish curiosity.
So what have you seen so far?
I found 2 animals in one of the paintings.
In an area of high unemployment, would the museum boost the local economy? More than €134 million are spent by visitors over the last 5 years, with an average of nearly 4 nights spent in the area. Visitors also often spend time in other towns like Lille and Arras. Yet this cash injection appears to have skipped over Lens centre, which has not seen an economic turnaround as hoped, though some residents remain positive about its economic fortunes.
I've witnessed partnerships spring up, creating clear networks between different businesses, and I think that's thanks to the Louvre.
In 5 years, the museum has welcomed over 3 million visitors and exhibited nearly 1,000 artworks, most of those belonging to its parent, the Louvre in Paris.
So there we go, that was the Louvre Lens up in northern France. Poverty and development, as we've been saying, in richer EU states are also part of this package. One of the reasons why this money is being spent, as we said. There has lately, though, been talk of Europe perhaps starting to move at 2 speeds, and this being formalised. The perhaps older, wealthier, bigger member states such as France, Germany, Italy, Spain, having different rules from the newer, smaller member states in the Central and Eastern Europe. Is that something that you see becoming a reality?
First of all, I think the two-speed Europe exists already, because we have Eurozone, we have different development levels. So I think it's very important to to help to mitigate these discrepancies and not to work on the division. And for me, it's clear that cohesion policy could help very much on that. You are right that in the last period, the spirit of solidarity and it's less, and maybe the egotism of the country is higher. But it's our duty as politicians to keep this unique project on our planet together. We should not forget the EU added value. And I really think that the departure of UK, which we regret but we accept, it was a wake-up call for all of us, or should be a wake-up call for all of us.
Well, the departure of the UK, it is going to leave quite a large hole in the European budget. I've seen a figure of 9 billion euros, perhaps more. There are some of these peripheral regions that have been receiving cohesion funding, saying that they're preparing to feel the pinch from this. They're not going to get as much money for all of these projects we've been talking about. Do you think that this could perhaps weaken pro-European sentiment even more if people perhaps feel a little bit let go by Europe?
We just started the discussion about the next multi-annual financial framework, the next budget from post-2020 in the framework of 27 countries. And of course, UK will leave the gap, as you said. But we should be, I think, realistic and ambitious. I think European budget could fill the gap with some own resources. We have this Monti report which proposes a number of initiatives to enlarge the basis of EU budget, and also it will be a discussion in the Council, very honest discussion among member states, how much they are willing to fill the gap. If they have to have investments in all regions, in all countries, it's obvious that they should think about giving more than €1 per citizens to the European budget.
Well, there's also perhaps money being lost to fraud or to waste of different kinds. There was a recent figure from the Commission saying that fraudulent use of EU funds is estimated to cost €50 billion per year. A new European Public Prosecutor's Office was recently set up to try and clamp down on and claw back fraudulently used money. How big of an issue is this, and how optimistic are you about getting some of that money back?
First of all, we are very clear on controlling. We have a very strong control system, and when we have this kind of things, that even a suspicion of fraud, we immediately ask the state for giving us money back. That we have financial corrections. We call
50 billion a year is a huge amount.
In my policy, we have 0.5%. We have 4% errors, but from these errors could mean that people don't know the regulations, public procurement, so on. But in our policy, in cohesion policy, is 0.5%. And what is, of course, a pity is that 70% of this money could have been detected at the level of national level. And as you said, that with European prosecutor, the countries will, I think, with this we could rely more on the system of controlling in the member states. It's a good thing for us.
OK, perhaps a long-term project, though. We've just got time for a brief word at the future. We are at the start of 2018, after all. French President Emmanuel Macron, very much pro-European, promoting Europe all around the world. And the Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker talking about more federalised Europe, bigger Europe in some ways. At the same time, though, we do have some tensions within the bloc itself. Central and eastern states, I could cite Poland, Hungary, seen as pulling away against Brussels, facing sanctions indeed. Just briefly, if you can, do you think Europe can pull it together and start moving in the same direction?
So it's my hope. I think for the whole continent, it is the only hope that we have to go together and to be a true, real competitor in the global market, to be together. But of course, regarding the sanctions, it is on the table, this idea of linking the funding post-2020 with the rule of law. And because we didn't foresee this possibility that entering into the family not to respect your obligations. Of course, you have a lot of benefits, but you have also some obligation, and it's clear that we have to deal with that in order to...
Are we talking about taking away voting rights, funding?
Now we don't have from this programming period, so until 2020 we don't have any link between the funds and the rule of law. That's why it's on the discussion for the next programming period. So until now we have, you know very well that the Commission triggered Article 7, the voting rights for Poland, but we don't have any possibility to talk about funds, even only if we have some suspicions of not using well. But anyhow, I think we should fight for a united, stronger Europe, and also these countries, as you said, they should see the benefits that European Union brought to them. If we talk about Poland, all in all, I think you know very well that when they joined the family, they had less than 50% the average, medium average, and now they are mostly becomes one of the net contributors because of the development of the country. 3,000 kilometers of highways and everything in Poland in the last 25 years, all the investments were almost done by European money, and people should know.
Well, there certainly are absolutely thousands of these projects going on and have happened already. Thank you very much for talking to us about them, Corina Cretu. Not time to talk about every single one, of course. And thank you as well for watching this edition of Talking Europe on France 24. Hope to see you again next time.